Okay, what is the Bill of Rights? Today we're going to talk about the Bill of Rights. We're going to review the Bill of Rights, actually. And what I want you to do as we go along is I will give you the amendment and kind of the catch-all phrase for the amendment. I want you to write that down. And then after that, I want you to draw a picture illustrating what you think the amendment means. That way you will have a picture to go with each amendment. It locks it up here, and you will be more likely to remember the amendments as we go. So the Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution, and they ensure our individual rights. They tell us, or they guarantee certain liberties and freedoms to us as U.S. citizens, or just being within the United States. Okay, so the First Amendment is what I like to call the 5 freedoms, which are the freedom of religion, freedom of press, freedom to petition, freedom of speech, and freedom to peaceably assemble. This First Amendment guarantees all of these freedoms to you, and basically these are lumped together in one amendment, but a lot of times people think, oh, I have these freedoms, and they don't realize that they're all lumped together in one. Freedom of religion, you have a right to choose any religion or not be religious at all. That's up to you. Freedom of press, you can print information in newspapers and websites, even though it may go against the government. Freedom to petition, you have an issue, you can let the government know. You can create a document, maybe get people involved with that, telling the government, this is what I don't like and this is why I don't like it. Freedom of speech, you can say what you want. Of course, there are limits on that. Freedom of assembly, you can get together as long as it's peaceful and you can protest your little heart out. Petition and protest and hold your signs, we want such and such, or no more of this and that. And that's your right as in the United States, that's your right. Okay, number 2, right to bear arms. We know that right means that you have a right to have a weapon to protect yourself. Of course, there are legal steps that you must go through to obtain these weapons, but you do have a right to carry or to have a weapon to protect yourself. The Third Amendment is about quartering troops. This amendment was created after the King of England created what was called the Quartering Act when we were part of the British colonies. Basically, he sent over redcoats and told the colonists that they had to let the redcoats live in their homes and provide for these redcoats because he didn't want to. He didn't want to pay for it. He wanted the troops over here, but he didn't want to have to fund their living expenses and provide shelter for them. So the Quartering Troops Amendment, the Third Amendment, basically keeps that from ever happening again. Basically, it says you have a right to not house soldiers in your home, even in times of war, unless there's an extreme case, which then the president would make that known. But basically, essentially, you don't have to let soldiers live in your home, even in times of war. And I know that sounds strange, but putting it in context with what was going on in the colonies, which was right before they wrote this, it kind of makes more sense that way. Amendment 4, search and seizure. This amendment basically says that the government does not have the right to just search you or seize your property without a search warrant, without there being a cause. They can't just walk into your house randomly and start taking things or search through your stuff without any sort of reason or search warrant. Number 5 is the rights of the accused person. If you remember, the Fifth Amendment is kind of long. It includes the right to not have to testify against yourself or plead the Fifth. It also includes no double jeopardy. You can't be tried for the same crime twice. If you're found innocent once, you can't go back on trial for that. It also includes the information about eminent domain. The government can't just take your property without giving you just payment for that. And then your It talks about due process. Your rights can't be taken away without due process of law, which means the government has to go through the proper channels. They can't just come up to you and say, hey, you committed this murder. We're going to kill you right now and put you in a firing squad or whatever. They have got to go through the due process. They've got to tell you what you've been accused of. They have to read you your rights. They have to take you before a court and a grand jury. You have to be heard by a grand jury. They have to decide if there's enough evidence to even go to trial. And then you have to go to trial among your peers. And a jury of your peers have to hear your trial unless you waive that right. And so it's basically just tells you everything you have, all your rights if you were ever accused of a crime. Number 6 means you have a right to a speedy public trial. So, speedy, I say that because nothing is really quick in our government, but in a timely manner, you have a right to a public trial. You have a right to confront your witness or confront your accusers. You have a right to gather witnesses on your side, and you have a right to a jury. Okay, that's what the Sixth Amendment means. Amendment 7 is trial by jury in civil cases. The amendment actually says in cases over $20, you have a right to a civil trial, which is separate from a criminal trial, which is you versus the government. Civil trial is you versus someone else. You have a right to a jury in civil cases if you would like. Okay, number 8, limits of fines and punishments. No cruel and unusual punishments, no cruel and unusual bails. The punishment has to fit the crime. The bail cannot be excessive. Part of the reason we made the 8th Amendment is because the Puritans practiced very cruel and unusual punishments during their time period, and we wanted to just protect our people from ever having to go through that again. You can't be given the death penalty for stealing some candy from QT. You can't be charged $1 million for stealing candy from QT. So your bail and your punishment, they have to fit the crime. Number 9 are the rights of the people. Amendment 9 basically says, here are the rights that we've listed for you in the Bill of Rights, but these are not necessarily all of your rights, and just because it doesn't say it in these 1 through 10 amendments doesn't mean that you don't have other rights. That's what the 9th Amendment means. Okay, number 10, powers of states and people. This was talking more about the idea of federalism. Basically, it's saying the Constitution has given the federal government these powers right here. We've listed them. This is what the federal government gets to do. If it's not listed in these powers, then the powers go to the state and the people of that state to make those decisions. And so the 10th Amendment kind of ensures the idea, the principle of federalism within our country.